Hello, and welcome into the Automation Excellence Webinar Series Part 2. Always does take a minute for everyone to get joined in, so just hang tight. We'll wait about 1 minute before we get started. For those of you just joining, we are waiting just a minute as we wait for folks to filter into the webinar. We'll get started in about 1 minute. I do see everybody filtering into the room, which is great to see. Thanks, everyone that's able to attend with us today. We're going to go ahead and get started here. So today we're going through the Automation Excellence Webinar Series Part 2, Modernizing Network Operations. Our agenda for the day, we're going to do some introductions. We will then move into the topics, which we're talking about industry trends, future-proofing, the necessity of adoption of modernizing our networks, the true cost of downtime and security breaches. Then we'll take a look at using Nautobot as your bridge to intent-based networking. Following that up with network to code and how network to code is positioned to help you in your organization. And then, of course, time for Q&A. As always, please do use the Q&A box there in Zoom. That's the best way to ask us questions. We can make sure it gets answered for you. We will either answer it live or we'll give you a typed response, and we will make sure we share it with the group as well so everyone can benefit from those questions that you might have. So, as introductions, my name is Tim Shryack. I am the Director of Sales Engineering here at Network to Code, and happy to go through with you today this webinar. So we're going to start off with our industry trends. Programmability, orchestration, cloud, and AI. These are some of the things that we're seeing as we work with our clients, as well as we observe the industry and help lead in this area as well. So one of the trends we're seeing a lot of is this move towards programmable networks. The idea that we should be able to control the network from things like APIs and have the network equipment integrate seamlessly into our overall application stack, allowing for us to have external logic to the way that we actually manipulate and make sure that our applications can communicate with each other. This means that administrators or network operators no longer are having to go in necessarily directly to the CLI to implement changes that are time-consuming and error-prone, as an example, right? So consumption of operations is drastically simplified through the use of self-service portals. So now, because we have these programmability, we're able to take a user's input of basic request of information and in some form of a portal, whether that's maybe perhaps the ITSM or other ways, and then begin to implement that change following the standard business process that is expected in your organization. Some of the folks that we're seeing coming in with these types of changes, and we'll kind of go through an example here where changes are expressed into this portal, right, and then triggered as potentially as well as a response to an event. They can also then be operationalized with as little human intervention or even zero intervention as much as possible, where we're able to take this flow and then program it into the network. Who's requesting these changes? Where are these types of interactions coming from? Traditionally, we were largely seeing these types of changes from engineers and our more technical folks. But as the ubiquity of applications and therefore the requirements from the network have grown, what we're seeing is that these kinds of requests are instantiating from potentially just customers or non-technical folks, or even like monitoring solution where it's have some form of automation that's requesting a change. And of course, our partners are third-party integrations. And quite often what we see with these people that are asking for these things, and they don't even realize they're asking for a network change. They just know they need some application to function, or they're looking for some functionality that underlying requires a network change in order to implement that. They're not even aware of that fact. And that's something interesting to think about, is that as we move into this programmable world, that there is this difference where we're no longer seeing folks that necessarily know what they're asking for really needing something done. And that is a key difference as we move down this path. We're seeing a trend as well to the multi-cloud environment, where organizations are moving to leveraging multiple cloud environments, whether it's a public cloud or a private cloud, and then within the public cloud, which one? This is becoming very popular, as well as our hybrid environments, where we have a combination of on-prem, private, and public clouds. Of course, maintaining these multiple cloud infrastructures adds complexity. Each one of the public cloud providers has a different method by which you control it. They have different control planes and different management planes. They have different methods. Their APIs are different. So being able to manage these adds complexity. And we're also seeing cloud-based IT management tools. Some of these are specifically from the vendors. An example would be like Cisco ACI or Meraki. And then we have other examples of our tools that are also moving to the cloud, whether that's CMDB or IPAM, ITSM, are decent tools, allowing us to operate more efficiently, to gain speed and streamlining our operations, because we're no longer worrying about operating that specific tool. We're now just taking advantage of that tool itself and being able to leverage its functionality. This allows us to deploy more quickly. We have very high availability available right out of the box. We can scale up and down as needed without needing to worry about our infrastructure. A major advantage of moving our control or management tools into cloud infrastructure. We're also seeing, as of course everyone is talking about now, integration of AI technologies. I don't think you can probably attend a webinar in the technical space right now and not talk at least a little bit about AI. And it is obviously going to be and is a game changer for us. We are seeing this as well here in the source of truth and network automation space as well. So here's some topics we see. Automated decision making. Due to our AI's capability to analyze large amounts of data, including, say, tickets or other inputs, AI was able to make very educated decisions about how a specific situation should be handled. Obviously, we are early in this adoption phase, but it's going to see a way in which we can advance both our capability to respond to issues and provision our networks. Data collection and analysis. Being able to interact with our logs and our data that we're collecting from the network through natural language processing, making it easier to find what we're looking for, that we can also be potentially also analyzing the data continuously. So not only can I evaluate as a human and ask for information back, I can also rely on the AI and language model to be monitoring and reporting things that are unusual, potentially even responding to them. Fault prediction. I think this is something really interesting where we're able to potentially predict an issue is about to occur through anomalies that may have been ordinarily missed. So we can notify administrators or operators that, hey, there's a problem coming, and notice these subtle changes that may potentially be missed. And therefore, we can have predictive maintenances rather than reactive. And then finally, performance optimization. Ability to plan for the future because we can predict more accurately where we're going. We can potentially get design suggestions and optimizations back from AI solutions. So this is a lot of what we're seeing in this space as we evolve into an AI-driven world. Now, future-proofing, the necessity of adoption. We want to talk a little bit about here as far as why and how should we move forward with these types of solutions that will save us money, reduce risk, and improve efficiency for us in our organizations. So creating and maintaining advanced technical capabilities. Some of the advantages we see, right? Higher service availability. If we're proactive with our fault detection, automated provisioning, and other advancements, businesses are now able to ensure that their services and their customers rely on enjoy higher availability. Right? Seems relatively obvious. We can be reduced time to deliver. We can have a shorter time to deliver. Automated design and implementation practices reduce the time required to deliver new services to customers. In some scenarios, it's possible to deliver a requested service immediately after it's been requested. This will allow our businesses to capture value more quickly, improving cash flow. Enhanced adaptability to market trends. This is something we're always being demanded of the business, that, hey, there is this market trend, we're going to shift the business, and therefore the technical teams need to adapt. We can now move more quickly to respond to those requests from the business. Reduce cost of delivery. This is always a major pain point for IT organizations. We're trying to find ways to deliver more at a less cost. Automations can really deliver on that promise. For an example, we can discover unused resources dynamically and help recover them quickly. This is a common case where we already have infrastructure deployed. We just don't realize that it's underutilized or not utilized at all. And it's available to us to consume. We just need to better consume it. It's driving more efficiencies, therefore reducing our cost of delivery. Increasing or enhancing our scalability and performance capabilities. This allows us to ramp up and down. Performance is also improved through deep analysis of the network to identify bottlenecks and areas for improvement. And then finally, improve customer support. Automations allow us to provide immediate responses to customer needs, whether it's provisioning a new service, troubleshooting existing service, or helping their business, our business, adapt to changing requirements. Just an interesting quote here from Gartner: network automation requires a reliable network source of truth. This is something we see as well, where organizations are beginning to realize this, that, hey, if we're going to be able to move forward and deliver on these promises that we talk about, we're going to have a network source of truth at its core that is accurate and fundamental to everything else we do. So moving on to modernizing our customer and employee interactions. How can we adapt and improve the way that we interface with the humans in the world? So our various personas here, whether it's our customers, our engineers, or our non-technical employees, we need to look at how we improve the interactions with those individuals. So as we look at, for example, our customers are asking for new services. There's new businesses coming into us. They're asking for service adjustments. They want to make a change to their existing whatever application or solution they have from us. Or there's a problem and we need to troubleshoot. How can we do that and improve that through things like self-service portals or internal platforms that are now able to communicate with each other via API, therefore enabling those responses more quickly to either a new service or adjustment to their existing service, for example. On the engineering side, we are requesting network changes or looking for performance data or fault information. Often, these things are a response to those things coming in from our customers. And we have similar types of solutions where we're using, again, self-service portals or the IT management platform and chatbots combined to be able to interface with the technology to get the information back to the engineer more quickly, more efficiently. And then non-technical folks, people that are helping us operate the business side of the world, right? Whether it's user provisioning or actually implementing those new services for clients or customers, troubleshooting. Again, similar types of solutions that we have different user personas though. So even though the underlying platform may look the same, we are implementing these such that they are appropriate for the individual consuming. So the customer will see a different view than the engineer, who in turn sees something different from our non-technical folks. Some of the benefits we see here to the business particularly is reduced engineering effort, frees up engineers' time. We can scale better, improves our customer satisfaction. This is really a great benefit here, where we're able to deliver our customers' solutions faster, therefore improving customer satisfaction. We can be more consistent as we have consistency in delivery and reducing our human effort. Therefore, that reduces human error. Automation will obviously improve speed and therefore leading to less errors as we do this manually. Some user benefits. It's just more convenient. I don't necessarily have to wait so long. It's more transparent. I can actually see the information that I need more readily instead of having to go ask someone else. And I am empowered to now go take on this work and do it myself, particularly if I'm an engineer or a non-technical employee, but even the same as a customer. Without realizing it, I'm actually doing some work myself by requesting something through a self-service portal that automation then delivers. Now, as we move into why making the investment, existing network management practices are inefficient and unreliable. This is the reality of the world we operate in today. We hold them together through just sheer human effort. And this has led to kind of organically grown strategies and solutions that are designed to address very short-term needs. They're very tactical as opposed to strategic. So if we look at an existing flow, right, where we typically see implementation of a request that's happening in many days, we have the order submission. There's probably something missing. So the first person to review that sends it back and asks for some additional information. And we finally get that updated. The engineer then reviews that and sends it on for approval. Then we go into the approval review, and probably there's something there that's missing, and that gets sent back again. We go through our approvals, then finally we move on to, let's say, our InfoSec approval. There's something wrong there. It goes back again, maybe all the way back to the original requester because it got missed along the way. Finally, we move into implementation. We implement, we have a failure on that. We have to iterate till finally, eventually we get to closing the ticket. And this is just the reality, right? That might not happen on every ticket, but it definitely happens on many of them that we're implementing, where at least somewhere along the path, we have a lot of overview, a lot of repeating because of either inaccurate data, insufficient data, or there was just simply a mistake. So as we move into looking at modern network management and using network automation, we submit the order and we go through all of those same steps, but we do it through automation. So now we can guarantee consistency. We're not going to miss something. We can have changes and requests that are pre-approved. So we don't necessarily have to go to our risk management or our InfoSec review boards every single time for every single change. And we know that it will be done, the change will be done in a compliant fashion. We know that we are going to adhere to all of our standards. We're never going to deviate from them because the code won't allow that. We will then perform the implementation through code and do automated testing. Again, one of the great benefits, we know that the testing is going to be done consistently the same way every time. And as we move through that process, because we're testing through automation, there may occasionally be an edge case that pops up that, oh, we didn't have a test built for that. This is one of the major advantages of automation, is we can now go build a test for that edge case, and that problem will never happen again, which is not something we can say in the existing world, right? When we have a problem that occurs and humans are running it, we make a note of it. We update some documentation, perhaps a Confluence doc or a SharePoint file, and we expect that everyone's going to take note of that. We update the wiki, whatever it is. But inevitably, 2 weeks later, that same problem is going to occur, and someone that will not have read that documentation will not be aware of it, and we will have the same problem over again. This is just inevitably what happens as we manage our networks by hand. Whereas when we move to automated world, that doesn't occur, right? We document it once, we fix it once, and then that problem is now solved from now on and forward. Major advantage there. Time-consuming, repeatable tasks cost organizations millions of dollars annually. Another great quote that we have from some of our industry experts, right? So this is where we're looking at how can we save time and effort, improving our delivery and consistency by using network automation. Here's just an example. You're now going from days down into minutes of delivery of a request through automation of this workflow. Data-driven decision-making. How do we enhance our analytics and methods of consumption? So this is the idea that, hey, we have our networks out there. They are becoming more complex. We have lots of sources of truth in the mix. We have our observability platform running in there, and it is producing probably large amounts of data. So how can we assist the operations, the engineers that are trying to keep and maintain good uptime in our networks and make this more reliable? So first is the notion of bringing an observability platform and linking it into our network source of truth. A network source of truth integrated with the observability platform has 2 major advantages. On the data consumption side, right, we're able to centralize our storage, visualization, and alerting into one place. So now we understand the status of a device and where it lives, where it's connected, how it interacts with the world, and all of the components that it's consuming in our world, as opposed to having these in separate places. In our traditional world, we have our CMDB, we have our DCIM, we have our IPAM, we have our monitoring tool, we have our ITSM. We have our controllers. We have an ACI, as an example here, specific of how we might be running an SDN. This idea is, hey, let's centralize that. Let's get all that information into one place. So now we can do things like having advanced dashboards that consolidate this data and combine it into one location where we can visualize it from. So, for example, we could automatically pull information from logs that we might be receiving from the telemetry platform and correlate that to metrics that we're receiving from our metrics collection methodologies. And then if we're now storing that in a time series database, we can start to visualize those trends. We can understand what happened. We can go back in time. We can predict what will happen as we move into the future. We can see what happens at the holiday season for us. Maybe we're a retail business. We can have accurate prediction of where we're headed as we are able to both document what occurred and visualize what could happen. Then data collection and manipulation. By giving a central place to access information, we can speed up our development. So that's achieved through REST API or GraphQL endpoints that the network source of truth can tie into the rest of the organization and the development in the code that's written external to those platforms. So now we don't have to have developers that are accessing 5 or 6 or 7 different APIs on different tools. They're able to access just a single API via the network source of truth, get a consolidated view of the data that's happening on the network, and then manipulate that or use it in whatever code they're writing. So let's take a look now at the true cost of downtime and security breaches. I think this is something that's really easy to overlook. In the moment when this happens, we struggle with it. We tell ourselves we're going to take steps to make sure this doesn't happen again. But inevitably, we end up kind of kicking it down the road, right? We kind of ignore those hidden liabilities, those risks, and those inefficiencies. But there is real cost that happens with these types of outages and security breaches. So let's take a look at that and kind of begin to examine what that means. So the true cost of an outage, when we think of it just normally, we probably think in these terms of like, there's some revenue per hour that the business is generating times the duration of the outage times the impact of the percentage of the overall business is the total cost of the outage, right? That's what we would say is probably our understood cost. But there are hidden costs that we're ignoring when we think of that. So for example, there's remediation costs. We are probably very often having to go to bring in outside personnel, third-party contractors, maybe third-party hands. We may have to replace or end up replacing equipment because of inaccurate diagnosis. How many times has this happened where we RMA some hardware because we think it failed and that actually wasn't the problem? Engineering hours, both internal and managed service providers that are having to be spent on remediating an issue. Conducting the RCA in the postmortem. If we're properly following up on an outage, we're going to end up spending a lot of time on this. And this is often overlooked. What ends up happening is it means that we take time away from a project that we were working on or a new deliverable that we were trying to get out the door, and we have to postpone that due to working on this RCA or the postmortem and understanding what happened. These types of events, especially in large or significant outages, can be very impactful, involving multiple teams within the organization to get to the root cause and understand what happened. There's just that opportunity cost of that, hey, we had to pull key personnel. Usually when this happens, we pull in all the senior level people. So all those folks that were supposed to be working on other things, on projects driving the business forward or the tech team forward, they're now suddenly pulled into this other task. And now we're just all hands on deck trying to understand what happened. Customer defections and reimbursements. Sometimes we lose customers as a result of these types of incidents. And/or we end up having to give back to our customers as a way to appease them so that they don't leave us. These are both very expensive. We don't want to have customer churn, and obviously having to give reimbursements is painful for everybody. It's difficult to implement. It doesn't really ever satisfy the client. They will always remember it. They will always bring this back to haunt you. Anytime there's a problem in the future, they will always reference what happened last year or the year before. Potentially, depending on the type of outage, there may actually even be civil penalties and fines, depending on the impact that we have and why it occurred. If we were negligent in some way, there may actually be some significant cost ramification to this type of event. And then finally, reputational loss. Not only from our customers getting upset with us, but also internally. These types of events are very demoralizing for our team. It hurts our impression to our word of mouth business. Investors may hear of this and become concerned, and it may be more difficult to negotiate as a business. So these are things we really need to consider as we think of it's not just about the revenue per hour lost. There is much more to this story as we think about how we deal with the ramifications of an incident. And then if we look at a security breach, this is, even going beyond those direct costs. We have, again, the currently understood what we might think of incident response and recovery, investigative activities. Might have to bring in outside vendors again, audit services now that are required to come in and check on us, or crisis management that we're commonly using to deal with a security breach. But there are additional hidden costs as well. Disrupted business operations. Quite often, we will end up having to shut down some portion of the network or even all of the network while we deal with the problem. Hardware and software recovery. Sometimes it may be damaged directly or indirectly, then we may have to remediate those to recover the technology to the pre-breach, for example. Maybe we have to pull in backups, for example, depending on the type of breach. Customer credit and identity monitoring. If the breach involves sensitive financial data, such as credit cards or other PII, businesses will often opt to offer free credit or identity monitoring services, an additional cost that we may have to incur. Again, civil fines, lawsuits, penalties are all possible. And then, of course, just ransom demands, right? This is happening as we're seeing in 2023, there was an estimate that over $1 billion in ransom payments were made globally. So a significant amount of money can end up going out just in order to avoid the problem, right? To just pay the ransom and move on, although that still has a cost. Leaked intellectual property can harm us from giving our competitors a significant advantage. And then, of course, the reputational damage. This is very difficult to recover from and is almost immeasurable when we think about what that reputational damage can do to a company. Just one here from IBM Security, that the average cost of a data breach for a US company in 2023 was $9.48 million. Significant impact to the business there. So those are some of the challenges we see. And as we realize those are real costs, now what can we do to begin to address this? So as we move into a world where we want to have intent-based networking, where we want to be able to provide reliable, scalable, consistent networks that are not vulnerable, what can we do? So Nautobot is that bridge. It's how we get from where we are today to where we want to go. It is the foundation to successful enterprise network automation. So here, as we take a look at this screen, we have a full view of a flow of how Nautobot can be utilized to provision and configure deployments into our network. Nautobot is able to fully provision networks with little to no human intervention. And that's really a key element to understand about what the Nautobot platform enables, because Nautobot is a network source of truth, and it is also an automation platform. It therefore allows our network architects to define reusable models of what the network looks like. Network operators can consume those models and those parameters in a friendly, human-readable way. Nautobot then takes the network's intent, the data being provided by the operator, merges that into now the changes required on the network, and deploys them out. So we can actually go through this entire flow using the Nautobot framework as we leverage all of the components within that Nautobot infrastructure. Finally, we're then going to do quality assurance and testing. So when we push a change into the environment, we're going to make sure that it's tested properly, both before and after, so we know that the network is performing as expected, and then auto-generating reports that can update into whether it's the ticket system, notifying the requester, or simply there for documentation purposes as we move forward in our world. So being able to leverage a single platform that has a lot of flexibility to design and implement your business process and therefore bring network change into your environment using intent-based networking. This is what Nautobot is all about. Nautobot allows us to have repeatable, scalable methods. So transitioning to new technologies and simplifying scaling. So here, for example, perhaps we're doing a network refresh and we're going to transition to some new models from the same vendor. But inevitably, there's always going to be some changes as we do that. Because we have described our intent in a vendor-neutral fashion and a model-neutral fashion, even for that matter, we're now able to make those changes in the intent state and then allow the leveraging of the Nautobot platform to then push out those updates into the new equipment. So we're basically translating from one model to another with very little human intervention. This also allows us to transition to new technologies because we have that intent already described in abstraction from the platform. So now we understand how the network is supposed to communicate. So whether we're using SD-WAN or some other form of WAN technology, it doesn't really matter. We're simply implementing this new method into the existing platform. The same as the idea whether maybe we're not just going from model to model, but we're actually going from vendor A to vendor B. In this example, we said Juniper to Arista. It could just as easily be Arista to Cisco or what have you. As we are able to move into a multi-vendor strategy, we now can leverage this intent to make these transitions more possible. This allows us to be more efficient, to potentially have a multi-vendor strategy, and to make sure that we can leverage our intent up against whatever infrastructure we have or whatever the request is from the technical team at the moment. We can do things like cloning, allowing us to scale more rapidly, whether it's a specific device like a switch or a router, an entire rack, or even an entire location. Because we have these designs expressed in a vendor neutral and abstract format into the source of truth, we now can rapidly spin them up and deploy them. So no longer is it a very large, difficult task to get configuration from one site to another site or one rack to another rack, or even just device to device. We can automate that process and actually express what those configurations should look like very rapidly. Version controlling. This is something really interesting as we see this trend towards intent-based networking and net DevOps. Nautobot enables us to leverage Git, and in fact, it was built from the ground up to implement and integrate with Git and Git workflows. This means that Nautobot is natively capable of enabling our CI/CD pipelines. It will integrate with whatever pipeline you're using, very flexible here. We are now having full traceability across our workflows. We understand who did what and when, because we're using automation to deploy and track those changes. Our approval processes are consistent and repeatable and make sense. They're documented in the flow. We understand them. And we can also do things like automated rollbacks if needed, or rollbacks on demand. Very easy to get back to our original state. These are all the advantages that we see using Git in general. And then when we leverage them and bring them into our network automation space, they really start to compound those value adds. Here's just some simple use cases where we see our clients and our community members using Nautobot and Git. So think device configurations, templating, automation scripts, and just export templates. Really being able to leverage the power of Git and GitHub into a Nautobot workflow. Nautobot integrates with the platforms you already use. You probably heard me allude to this before. For example, it doesn't matter what orchestration platform you're using or what vendor you're using on your hardware. You can keep the architecture you already have while you build out that architecture that you want. This is a key element of the idea of Nautobot, is that it should be extensible and flexible. Regardless of whether the data that you need to operate your world is in the cloud or traditional network or IT management platform, Nautobot has the ability to interact with them. And again, whether it's a vendor or a tool or some other form of data storage, Nautobot is intended to be really flexible this way. That is why we built the platform. That is why the Nautobot framework exists. And you see that automation layer there, that creating that capability to interact with the world around us. Nautobot is designed to implement your world and your business process. We don't expect you to adapt to the tool adapts to you. little bit about Nautobot Cloud. Now, we talked about this idea of moving into cloud-based controllers and the advantages we see there. We see this happening with a lot of the major vendors as well, whether we're talking about Arista Cloud Vision or Meraki from Cisco. We have these examples of very cloud-based driven tools. And they bring so much value add to the business in that we no longer have to worry about operating the tool. Well, the same is true of Nautobot. Now, rather than having to deploy this on-prem and worry about running that infrastructure, having a team that's capable of managing that underlying infrastructure, instead, it's all available for you, operated by Network to Code in the Nautobot Cloud. This means that we can take advantage of all of those benefits of the automation marketplace, the enhanced data analytics, those APIs that allow us to create those workflows, those net DevOps pipelines and workflows, without having to worry about any of that underlying infrastructure. So all of the benefits of Nautobot with none of the headache. It is self-service and allows us to scale out. So we have not only the core Nautobot functionality available, which is exactly the same as you might see in the open source project, but also layered on top as additional value adds. So for example, better insights into your data and your workflows, the advantage of those dashboards that provide that data analytics for you. So some great advantages coming there in Nautobot Cloud. And then the key component of Nautobot and what really differentiates Nautobot as a source of truth is its automation platform. We've alluded to this throughout the talk today. Here's an example of some of our very robust available applications we have out there. Some of the most popular are Golden Configuration app. This app allowing you to define what your network standards are, so express your intent, and then compare that to what's actually out there in the real world to understand those differences. Device lifecycle management, another really popular one, understanding the hardware, software, and security aspects of your devices, being able to manage those, report on those, understand like, hey, this CVE just came out. Does that impact us? And quickly get a report, understand that. Potentially then rolling right into, it does impact us. And in fact, we need to get out and upgrade into our firmware. So great, rolling right into the OS upgrades application, also available as part of the Nautobot platform, enabling us to quickly deploy updated operating systems into our environment. So as we look at Network to Code as a business, not just the Nautobot project, but how are we positioned to help, ensuring that you have a holistic approach to network automation? Kind of just this quick thought about like the importance of expert guidance. If we're trying to get to the goal of lowering our operating costs, enhanced stability, business agility, improving our security, better insight and control, of course, potentially you could challenge your teams or task your teams with going out and taking this on. But inevitably, that is not going to be a straight path. There are going to be things in the way. There might be bears in the way. There might be vacations and mountain time in the way. There's going to be dragons, of course. There are all of these things that pop up along the way that make it difficult for us to get to the goal. We end up chasing different paths, realizing, that path is not going to take us to success. And this is the value of partnering with a company like Network to Code, where we have been down these paths before. We understand what these challenges are, and we can help you avoid them. We can get you directly to the goal as quickly as possible, showing ROI back to your immediate business within the technology teams, and as well as to the overall team as well, to the overall business as well. So why NTC? Realizing that those outstanding results come from expertly informed approach. We have the experience. Our team at NTC consists of, we believe, the most extensive group of network automation experts that exists. We have implemented these types of solutions for hundreds of our enterprise clients, and that has led us to build a comprehensive approach. We understand that adopting automation is not just a technical challenge. Our holistic approach is going to focus on all the components. That is, how do we get everyone on board with this notion of moving from how they do work today to how they will do work in the future? How do we understand the business process, and make sure that we're implementing our business process specifically within the technology stack, so that we integrate these three things seamlessly and painlessly? And if you were listening closely, I just said people, process, and technology without actually saying it, because everyone likes to say it, but very few actually deliver on it. And this is what we built our business around, is this idea that we need to do that because the technology is amazing. And in fact, it's the easiest part of the problem to solve. The process, the business, and the people, those are the hardest two parts. And if we don't do those parts, the technology piece really doesn't matter. And so that is a key element to our business. That is our comprehensive approach. We are taking on all of those components. And then speed. Our team acts as a force multiplier. We have the specialized skill sets across our deep bench of engineers and developers that can understand your challenges, whether they're technical, people, or process, and make sure we get those solved as quickly as possible. These are the value adds Network to Code brings to the table and why it is more efficient and probably saves you money versus doing it yourself. Here's some example outcomes that we have seen with our clients. These are our specific use cases that we have helped with. I alluded to it earlier on the previous slide about the operating system upgrades. How can we automate that? This is a specific example for one of our clients. They had about 10,000 devices in their environment. And before the project, they were spending around 7,000 hours of effort in order to upgrade their environments when they did that. Now, of course, because that's so much time, they weren't doing it very often. This led to some security issues where there were vulnerabilities in their network due to lack of patching. Through automation, we're able to get that down to 600 hours, a significant savings in time and effort going into doing those upgrades. And notice we didn't give you some ridiculous promise that they went from 7,000 hours to 2 minutes. We're trying to be realistic here. We want to really show you real world solutions with real world experience. We're not going to promise you the world and not deliver on it. This is really about reality. Keep it compliance. Another perfect example, we do this in almost every single one of our engagements that we work with on our clients. This is usually part of the base foundation. That is, we need a source of truth, we need to get it populated with data, and we need to get the network consistent and reliable in compliance with our standards. This leads us to less frequent outages, shorter outages when they do occur. We can troubleshoot more easily, and we have a better security posture by quickly and easily understanding how the network is configured versus how it should be configured, and then making sure we can remediate that and fix that. All right, some great resources out there for you if you want to learn more about Network to Code or Nautobot. We have ebooks and white papers available that can be leveraged from our website. We have a whole webinar series and videos. You're on the second one of our Automation Excellence webinar. We do have others as well. And of course, we have several books out there. Our most recent is the Network Automation with Nautobot. This is a very technical book for your developers and engineering teams, but others available as well for those that may be just beginning. So we have an extensive catalog of reference material available for both you and your team members to be able to learn from and grow from. All right, so that concludes our prepared section of the slides, and we're moving into our Q&A section. So if you have any questions, please do feel free to put them into the Q&A there. And it looks like we did get one coming in here very quickly. Thank you for that. So I'm looking to streamline our network automation workflows. Can Nautobot integrate with ServiceNow self-service portals for easier user provisioning? Absolutely. We have seen this trend that many organizations are using ServiceNow and the ServiceNow CMDB and want to implement their workflows as the instantiation point. Yes, in fact, most of our clients that we do integrations with, we almost always integrate with ServiceNow in some form or other, whether it's for a workflow or the ServiceNow CMDB. So absolutely, we're there for you on that front. And by the way, that's not a limitation. If you're using some other ITSM, no problem. But by far and away, the one we most commonly see right now is definitely ServiceNow. Let's see. Looks like we got another one coming in. Wow, you all are firing them away at me. Thank you. We're considering a cloud-based deployment for Nautobot. Are there any major drawbacks compared to on-prem? And then there's also follow-up. So let's do with the first one first. Are there any major drawbacks compared to on-prem setup? I would say no, to be honest, with one exception. The only requirement from the Nautobot cloud perspective is that we are going to have to create connectivity between the cloud infrastructure and your internal infrastructure as a way for Nautobot to reach out and touch devices. Typically, we do that via some form of tunnel, but it can also be done via direct connect method on the back end. So depending on how you can use and consume public cloud, that may actually be very easy. That's probably the only disadvantage I would see over an on-prem deployment is that idea. Now, perhaps you're in a world where you say that's not possible. No problem, we got your back. We can deploy an on-prem proxy that would be able to reach out and touch devices within your world, and then it's going to reach back out and phone home, providing that information back to Nautobot Cloud. So there is a way around that if you're in a world where we cannot build a tunnel between Nautobot Cloud and your on-prem infrastructure. Which cloud platform does Nautobot use for cloud deployments? So we are flexible on this. As far as the way we operate our infrastructure, we do try to keep that as amenable to the world, as well as making sure that we're able to accommodate no matter where you are in the world. So if you are outside of the US and in some other part of the world, we can accommodate your data compliance requirements. Let's see, some other questions coming in here. Let's see, does Nautobot do device configuration backup? Absolutely. So this is one of the optional components of our Golden Config app, is the capability to do device configuration backups. In fact, that's how we understand the actual state of the device. Whether you want to leverage the whole application or not, you can use Nautobot to do those backups. So absolutely. The great thing about that is Nautobot is going to store those backups in Git. So you have them fully version controlled, that full history there available for you, as well as easy to consume them in the Nautobot UI and understand and look at your backups. Let's see. Is there a more specific architecture drawing of a standard on-prem or cloud Nautobot deployment that gives a little more detail other than the standard marketing materials? Understood. Absolutely, yes. Please do reach out to us. We'd love to get you that reference architecture and show you what that looks like. You can reach out through some links that we'll show you here at the end of the webinar. We'll get you that information, no problem. Would the Nautobot source of truth, this is coming in from Daniel Cote, would the Nautobot source of truth CMDB data and device inventories be synchronized with ServiceNow in real time? So how does that synchronization occur, I think is what you're asking, as we move data back and forth between Nautobot and the ServiceNow CMDB, or for that matter, any other source of truth external to Nautobot. So how that synchronization occurs is very flexible. It can occur ad hoc, that is, you click the button and it happens. It can occur in a regular schedule. You say, I want it to happen once every hour, or you can have it happen triggered by a webhook. So let's say there's an event that occurs, there's an update into the ServiceNow CMDB, and we want to do that synchronization immediately. So you have that full control of that flexibility, how that could occur. So it absolutely can occur in real time. By real time, let's say within a few seconds, because obviously it may not be immediate, but as near to real time as is reasonably feasible. So yes, absolutely possible. All right, any other questions? I'll give you another minute or so. Looks like we may have one last one coming in here just now. I'm evaluating Nautobot alongside other network automation tools like Netbox and Ansible. How do they compare in terms of functionality and use cases? So I'm going to address the Ansible one first, because that's kind of interesting. So traditionally, we think of Ansible. There are two major components of the Ansible project. There's the Ansible, the idea of like, I have a playbook that I run on my laptop and it executes some tasks. That's the automation piece of Ansible. Then there's Ansible Automation Platform, or formerly known as Ansible Tower. That's the orchestration component of Ansible. That's where I say, I want to do a whole series of tasks, and I'd like to check out the results of those. Now, in the first case of Ansible automation, that is a playbook. Nautobot is tightly integrated with Ansible. In fact, it was built on top of a lot of those ideas. So we're actually able to consume Ansible and use it directly within the platform of Nautobot. Then on the orchestration side, the external component to Nautobot, Nautobot is absolutely designed to integrate with and consume or utilize Ansible Automation Platform, Ansible Tower, Ansible AWX, which is the open source version of those. So absolutely tightly integrated with and intended to inform those states. The benefit we get is now I no longer need to worry about things like my Ansible inventory, my device vars, my group vars. All of that is maintained by Nautobot. So we have that major advantage there as far as how we can integrate and use those tools, eliminating a lot of the Ansible overhead, the pain of using Ansible. Now we get all the value of it without having to deal with the hard parts of it. As compared to Netbox, Nautobot was really built to be extensible and flexible. And one of the key differences is the idea that we have our network source of truth layered in with our automation platform. The idea that data in and of itself is not that valuable. The value comes from when we use the data to actually drive the change and drive our network. And that's what Nautobot is built to do. Nautobot is built to give us a way to actually operate our environment from data. So we change data and then things happen. The major benefit to this is that we're no longer thinking of data as documentation, but instead we're thinking of data as the way we actually drive and operate our network. This is very much a paradigm shift for our engineers, and it is really the key distinction between operating in a traditional CLI-driven world versus operating in an intent-based or net DevOps-driven world. Okay. We did just get one more in here while I was answering that question. Is Nautobot perpetually licensed, subscription-based, or not licensed at all? So it is licensed under the Apache 2. So it is free and open source. Everything you see in the project is free and open source. If you would like to consume our Nautobot Cloud option, which is the same code, enhanced, but available to you, that is available via subscription. All right, that's the easy button. Don't need to worry about deploying it on-prem. But as far as the Nautobot code itself, it is licensed under Apache 2. Okay, I think that is all of our questions for the day. Let's move on here as we come into the conclusion of the webinar. Some other great things. Now, we talked a little bit about the people. If we're serious about this, we really need to level up our teams in addition to the technology and the business process. And we're here for you at that as well. We have instructor-led training. So that is your team members come into either one of our public or one of our private classes. They're able to spend about half of their day with the trainer and half of their day doing labs, kind of in a back and forth method. So, roughly some time with training, some time with lab practice. So they're really beginning to understand and consume the things that they're learning and actually put them into practice throughout their training class. Following that up with that online training. This is great for after their live training class. Now they're able to have materials, reference documentation, and really begin to continue this journey as they move back into regular life and now actually taking advantage of those things they learned. As you look across that trajectory there, you can see we have all the way from just the beginning, hey, I'm brand new to network automation, I don't know anything about network automation, all the way up to I'm very advanced, I'm a developer, but I really need to understand more details about telemetry, monitoring, or Nautobot itself. How do I actually manage configuration with Python? So all of these very advanced topics available as well. So we're here to take your team and your people from where they are now all the way to where they need to go. So as we look at the topics we covered today, we learned how intent-based networking and Nautobot delivers outstanding outcomes that make your organization more productive and reduces operational risk. We covered some real-world examples and practical examples of intent-based networking in action. We went through this idea of what does it mean as far as future-proofing? What is the real true cost of downtime and security breaches? And then finally looking at how Nautobot and Network to Code are positioned to help. Thanks very much for attending. Here's some links to all things Nautobot and a QR code there available for if you are interested in a demo or having a session with some of our sales team members. Thank you very much and look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.